Now, like I said before, when Uncle Luke got involved, we knew it was going to be problematic. If you guys are new here, my name is Ashley, and this is my sweet perspective, where I give my take on all things TV and movie related. And y'all, I'm here to put you on, okay? And today I am joined by an illustrious guest, Jay from VKJ TV, and we are here to talk about Freaknik, the wildest party never told Hulu documentary that aired last week. Now, Jay, before I
Uh-huh.
get off into this deep, you ever been to Freaknik?
Um, I wish I could say yes, but no. I've been invited. I was invited millions of times because back then when that started in the 90s, I was in the music industry. So all the music heads, all the DJs, all the producers, the artists, they were down there. So I did have the opportunity, but thank God, no, I did not go.
Well, I was much, much, much too young to be at the
Mm.
Freaknik. However, my uncles did go, at least for the last 3 or 4 years, but they were not college students and they were not there just for fun times. And I'll
Uh,
just set that right
Leave it
there
right
and let
there.
the people make their own deductions of it. But I really enjoyed the documentary. I didn't know what to expect, right? I just knew we was gonna see somebody's aunties, somebody's mamas, they grannies, they
Yep.
cousins. I knew we was gonna
Mm.
see some inappropriate things. That's what I knew
Mhm.
for a fact. But I didn't actually anticipate that we would get the full historical breakdown that we did and how it evolved into music and culture and how it really shaped the 90s, right? It shaped so much of the 90s from fashion to music, um, to just the way we kind of interacted with one another, right? In like a party space. And so I thought that was very interesting. But I'll just get right into it. We'll kind of break it down and talk about the things in the documentary that stood out to us. Yeah. So were you surprised to find out that Freaknik, what it what it ended as, was not what it started out being? Was that a shock to you?
It was I was not expecting them to go that far back to talk about where it started, but I'm glad they did because it definitely gave us context as to what this party was all about. Again, I heard about it in the 90s, didn't know it really started in the 80s and where it came from and the clubs that started it and the different clubs at the different, colleges out there, right? And it was great to get that backdrop, that backstory, the history of it, because I honestly thought that it was like, hey, let's just go and party in the streets. That's all I thought it was when I heard about it. Oh, we're just gonna go party in the streets, walk around all day, look at girls, girls look at guys. We're drinking, we're doing all types of stuff. That's all I thought it was.
That
But
part.
when they broke it down, I was like, wow, this is great
It really was.
because yeah, it was really great.
It really was, and I thought it was neat. So, basically in the documentary, we get to meet, I believe, the 4 or 5 founders who were from the DC chapter, of these different Black college clubs they used to have. So, you remember back in the day, especially in the '80s, well, I've heard about it, I'll say that, but we would always hear about, people of other ethnicities having their college spring breaks, right? They would go to Daytona, they would
Yeah.
go, we know they go to Florida, in Arizona, they'd go to Havasu. There were so many different destinations where they could go party, girls gone wild. It was like the thing, right? But in the 80s, especially the early 80s, when this was founded in 83, Black colleges had come up with these little clubs where they would plan kind of their summer events, right? What they would do when everybody else had left to go home for spring break or summer. They needed
Mhm.
something to do. They wanted to have a party experience, right? But with us. And so I believe Pennsylvania had a chapter, DC had a chapter, and
Mhm.
the people that were from DC, I believe, actually went to school at Spelman, at Morehouse. Like there's
Yeah.
a range of this group. And so we get to
Mhm.
meet them and they're reunited after 40 years or so, which was awesome to see. Um,
Yeah.
you really got to see, like, dang, look at what we built. We created this thing. Now, what
Mhm.
it turned into is a different story, but they talked about how they got funding from the community, right? I believe they
Yeah.
started, was it Piedmont Park in Atlanta,
Mhm.
whatever the first park was, but they got the okay for it. Vendors came out, and it started out with strictly college students. That's all who
Right.
could attend, that's all who knew about it. And
Mhm.
originally, they just said it was a nice, fun time. The people in the Greek organizations would come and they would stomp the yard. It was just a great place to party, to mix, mingle, during their breaks.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Cool. And so
Yeah.
then, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. I'm like, yeah, I'm listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's all I was gonna say about that. I just thought that that was really neat to see how the community loved it. Atlanta loved it for the first couple years. They said they brought so much money to the city,
Oh
and it
yeah.
was a nice, organized, calm, right? Even for
Calm.
college kids on spring break, it was a calm, just a fun kinda
You could
party in the
say
park.
it was very innocent, new, fresh, and it was keeping kids out of trouble, right? If you really think about it, hey, what else are kids going to be doing on spring break? Well, if they're not doing something bad, they got to be doing something good. Hey, how about we put this thing together that we call a picnic, but with the freak in it? And I like how that part. I know you're going to get to that part,
Yeah,
but I just like how they put that together as well.
they did. They said they got it from, La Chic, right?
Yes,
And so
yes,
I thought that was cool. They got that from the song, and they wanted to combine freak with picnic, and they came up with Freaknik.
Freaknik, right, right. Because I
Not
remember that song,
knowing
"Freak Out." I remember that song.
not knowing that it would become like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So
Hmm.
for the first, I guess, 9, 10 years of it, it had stayed um fairly on the up and up, right? It was
Right.
really just about this big party, this get together where you could come hang out, whatever.
Mhm.
And again, primarily just focused on HBCUs, black college kids coming. Well, year after year it started to grow, and
Oh yeah.
sooner rather than later it was more than college kids coming to the
Yeah, I think they
party.
said up until the year of '93, I think that was the change. That was the last year that everything was like, "Oh, hey, we're here with college students." And then after that, that's when we
Baby, it
started
was
seeing everybody in the country come down because, you know what was going on. The kids that were going to Morehouse, Spelman, all this and that, they were telling their cousins in New York. They were telling their
absolutely.
cousins in Cali. They was telling all their, oh man, I love this. They got this thing called Freaknik. Come on down. So the whole nation started to come down, and that's when we see the transition start to happen.
Exactly, and we also see at this time, I guess the emergence of rap, especially in the South, becoming more prevalent, and so we started seeing, music impact the culture in terms of the Freaknik, right? So artists
Right.
would come down to get spins, right, by the local area DJs during this time because they knew if they could get on the radio during Freaknik, right, it was gonna be great for
Well, it
their
was a
advancement.
Oh yeah, it was a great place, and we've seen this in other shows and things being explained. Like it was a great place because back then there was no internet. So if you had a single, if you had a record, if you had whatever, it was the greatest place to go because now you can go there and just hand out CDs and hand out tapes and stuff like that, and just give it out for free and get your music out there. And then eventually it would get into the hands of the DJs and stuff like that. But it was a great place for the South, for Atlanta to be put on as far as being like the staple that it has become, as far as like the music mecca that it is today. So it really started kind
Absolutely.
of along with Freaknik, along with the artists out there, the Dungeon Family, of course, the two of our favorites, Outcasts, right? The Goody Mobs and all of that. Like all of that is based on Jermaine Dupri, right? They talked about Jermaine
Yeah,
Dupri and
Lil
everything else like
Jon,
that.
yeah.
Lil Jon, and of course TLC, and all of that. Like it was
Epic.
good to kind of like see how they utilize Freaknik as a marketing tool to get their music out
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. And so with that, right, in
Yeah.
'93, we get, I guess, a Florida influence because because Uncle Luke comes out, right? And so up to
Uncle
this
Lou.
point, we hadn't seen really violence at the Freaknik. It was really just fun loving whatever, right? We hadn't even
Mhm.
heard about too much overt sexual type stuff happening,
Nope.
right? But we know, and there was a crusade against Uncle Luke back in the I can even remember the
Oh
crusade
yeah.
against Uncle Luke and how explicit the lyrics were and how they incited
Oh
People
yeah.
wanted to want to get Bucky naked, but he came in 93 and he even says it. It was never the same after that, right? So now we have the advent of all of these different people coming now, not just college students who are fairly
Yeah.
restrained and have something going on in their lives. We now have
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
cousins, uncles, brothers, everybody, and it kind of turns when Uncle Luke is present. Pop that,
Yeah.
she got a big oat, but
Doodoo Brown.
it
Absolutely.
was a whole new the temperature was changing and the culture present was changing as well, right? They said after that we knew the women were going to be becoming more scantily clad. They
Mm.
didn't call it twerking back then, they called it booty shaking, and
Booty
so there
shaking.
was a whole lot of that. And I
Oh
think for the
yeah.
first couple years when they interviewed some of the women who were at the Freaknik, they felt empowered, right, during those
Mhm.
first year or two after that. I can wear what I want. I don't have to worry about being touched. I can dance how I want to dance. I can be with who I want to be with, right? I feel
Right.
empowered. That swiftly
Right.
changed, I want to say 94, 95, as we start
Mm.
to see some predatory behavior start to
Mm.
happen. What did you think of that when you kind of saw, okay, this music comes in, then kind of as a direct correlation, we see
Right.
other
So
stuff?
just a little bit more history here. We have to shout out to Uncle Luke, just on a musical standpoint, because he is the one that did make history to make sure that we have freedom of speech in our music. All right. So he was the first rapper, artist to be attacked and actually won. Like, we got the freedom of speech to say what we want to say on records. Now, what he said was, I had to bring the freak to the Neek. He said somebody had to do it, right? So, we got Two Live Crew. That's the whole Miami movement going on, right? So they heard about Freaknik and said, yeah, we're going to make it happen. And ever since then, he came up. Now celebrities are coming. It became more popular, okay, but absolutely more freakier, more booty shaking. So if you were looking for that, yes, you're gonna come down there. But unfortunately, it turned from a college event into pretty much a street fair where you have what's supposed to be inside the club, but now it's in the streets. And then it
Absolutely.
turns into, some violations because now you don't have college men coming down. These are grown men
Oh, amen.
coming down to see these young ladies and unfortunately doing some things they should not be doing, really, really disgusting things. And some men were standing up for it and some men weren't. And, unfortunately, fortunately for the ladies, there weren't a lot of cameras around. But I remember seeing one lady and her story.
Mm,
So I don't know if you want to go there yet, but I remember seeing that one young
yeah.
lady and her story. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they share a couple in the documentary, but I think the one that was most, and a trigger warning, guys. I don't know if anyone's
Trigger
ever
warning.
dealt with anything, but these are some heavy themes that go on here. But I think it was the one who was driving in the city with her friend, and they had grabbed something of her friends, and her friend stops the car and gets out and goes to pursue the person who took whatever. She's left in the car. The people want her to get out of the car. She doesn't get out. They start shaking the car. Until eventually she's taken out of the car and her
Mm,
clothes are ripped from her, and they basically accost her. And she says the only reason that she wasn't SA'd was because one man yelled police.
mm,
And that was the only way that she got away. And even hearing her tell this story 30 years later, it was still traumatizing. And of course, we
yeah.
heard other stories as well, of other women touches that weren't asked for, violations. I think when they read off the numbers, I was surprised it wasn't more, but I also know
Mhm,
that back then in those days, a lot of people didn't report things.
mhm,
But I think they had mentioned 6 SAs, and some other kind of violent situations,
yeah,
but it wasn't as many as I thought it would be when you saw how things had devolved by, like, 94, 95. Like,
right,
it was just
right,
a
right,
whole other atmosphere. It got to a point where the women were like, I used to feel safe to wear what I wanted to wear, come down
mhm.
here, I was gonna be respected."
With you, consent is always a must. Um, everybody was there to have fun, but I remember them saying there were also people there to hook up. there
Mhm.
were, just innocent, like, hey, there's gonna be some girls there. Man, I need the girls. I would love to meet a girl. There's gonna be some guys there. We need to go check
Absolutely.
out these guys, right? So it was that innocent, and there were people there like that, but then there were some people there who were just there to make trouble. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, that's where everything turned. Um, very triggering, very upsetting. I'm getting upset right now about it, but I can tell you that um thank God for the guys. I'm sure they're not talking about it, but I'm sure there was guys there who
There
were
had to be.
trying to stop other guys from doing stuff. Okay, so shout out to those guys. Of course, they're not being shown,
Unsung. Yeah.
right? The unsung heroes who stopped these terrible men from doing what they did to these young ladies.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate because I don't think that was Uncle Luke's intention.
Oh, no.
I think it was just, let me bring the freak up here. Let's have a good time. Let's party. You know what I'm saying?
I do
Let's
too.
party. Let's do what we do. We can make a whole lot of money with open, going to these clubs and stuff like that. And let's bring out our new artists. And it was all entertainment back then. I don't think they had any intention of these terrible people just coming down and doing stuff to women they shouldn't have been doing.
No, I don't
It
think so.
just, yeah.
I think it created kind of a culture, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
gonna do this, I'm gonna wear this is the atmosphere. And I think for
Hmm.
whatever reason that atmosphere drew once they found out what was going on, right? It drew this
Yeah.
element, which is unfortunate because I don't think it was a ton of the men. But it
Yeah.
did get to a place where the women started to feel unsafe. But even with that, right? That's not
Yeah.
really the reason why Freaknik ended.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
ultimately, from what we deduce from the documentary, Freaknik ultimately ended not really because of the violence towards women or
Hmm.
um, misogyny or anything like that. It was really about the funds. It was really about the
That's right.
Olympics
The Olympics. Yep, I remember
coming
that. Yes.
to uh and the fact that now that this new group of people were coming down, what the local merchants and retailers were making, um, they were spending a lot more in cleanup. They felt like their city was
Mhm.
being destroyed after the party. They weren't making as much money as they had been making before. And the Olympics, where they might make a couple $1 million for Freaknik, they were going to make billions. The city was going to make
Billions,
billions
yeah.
with the Olympics. So then we
Right.
see the enforcement of like the red dogs. We
Mhm.
see when Freaknik time came, they blocked off the interstate. So if you were from
Yep.
out of town coming in, there was no way to get in town. And the people who were native to Atlanta said traffic in the city during Freaknik would be backed. It got to a point where they said, if I'm in town during Freaknik, I'm going to take a vacation. Like, there's no way
Right.
I'm going to be in Atlanta during the
Yeah.
Freaknik because they made it untenable. The city rallied and were like, "No,
Yeah,
find
they
something
shut the
else to
whole
do."
city down. They shut the whole city down. They wasn't having it. And of course, with billions of dollars coming in, it's their job to now clean this up. We're not having this anymore. You're not gonna We were awarded the Olympics to come to our city. That's hundreds of thousands of jobs coming in. There's hundreds of thousands of investments and everything. We're not stopping this. So you guys are gonna have to stop this little thing that you got called Freak Niggas. Gonna have to shut down. Sorry,
Mm.
but not sorry.
And they did everything that they could logistically to stop it. And eventually, again, the women weren't feeling safe.
Yeah.
The people from out of town said, "Why am I going to come? I can't even get there." It's like I'm going to spend the whole weekend driving around trying to get to Freaknik, and
Hmm.
then nothing's even happening anymore. So eventually, we see it just completely fizzle out. There
Yep.
were amendments, I believe, by the chapter, the club, the founders. They had presented. Evidence to the government to request that Freaknik be officially disallowed. And
Mm.
then that was kind of the end of it. Now,
Mhm.
towards the end of the documentary, they do talk about someone who bought the name Freaknik,
Mhm.
and they're
Mhm.
trying to do some sort of festival. But all of the original like OGs from Atlanta are like, no, it's not this.
Yeah.
It'll never be the same. Quit talking
Never.
stupid. Like, we're not
Mhm.
doing this again. Like you said
Yeah.
before, it was like back then there was no cameras. It was just you were going to connect with people and have a good time.
Yeah.
Now it would be all for the gram. It would be all for TikTok. It'd be all for Instagram. It'd be all
Right.
for likes and views. So,
Yeah, and it was mostly like the musical artists that kind of was like, yeah, I was born in that time period, right? Because a lot of people hooked up. So, yeah, I was
mhm,
born in the 90s, da da da. Let's bring it back. So, from what I gathered, from what I saw, it was really like, these artists who heard about Freaknik, but they wanted to bring it back just on some musical level, a festival, or whatever the case is. But it would never ever be the same. Again, when I watched it, when it was innocent and good, it was a great place where black people can come together and feel good and see each other and hook up and have fun. It was very empowering to see each other, just a pool of black people coming together.
yeah,
And that's what it was supposed to be, And when it went left, it just kind of messed things up. So to be honest, in my personal opinion, I'm kind of glad that the Olympics came, because
yeah.
to shut that down, think about it. How many women were saved
That's
because
true.
it didn't go on, because it was
That's
shut
very
down?
true.
You know what I'm saying? If it kept going, it would have just got worse,
Lord knows what it
right?
could have
Right,
devolved into. Yeah,
right.
it's crazy to think something so beautiful and so uplifting to the community could turn around and be,
Yeah.
but I
But
do
that's
think
that's
the
us.
it is. It's cyclical, right? Because we
Mm.
see it kind of in every era of time, right? Something
I do want
happened.
to point this out though.
Mhm.
They did mention they did mention this before it started to get bad. They did mention how in the black community, at Freaknik, for the most part, there were some of us that were getting harassed, but yet they did mention that their white counterparts who are in different other places kind of doing the same thing,
Yeah, in
but they weren't
Daytona,
harassed. Right.
Girls
But
Gone Wild.
right, right. But they
Well,
weren't as harassed. So
but now
just
we're
wanted to point
seeing
that
it
out.
play out 2024 in Florida. I don't know if you know what's going on there. But
Mm.
Miami, Tampa, they've released commercials talking about don't come here for spring break.
Oh
Like
yeah.
literally banning.
I heard about that. They
I
shut
said, I
it
guess
down.
they said that they literally would come every spring break and destroy the
Hmm.
local businesses, the beaches, like where
Right.
it would take so much money after spring break to even get it back into working order.
I actually met someone from Fort Lauderdale, and she was very upset. I said, "Why are you upset?" She said, "Because of spring break and because they shut down Miami, now all these folks are coming to Fort Lauderdale.
Oh
So what
man.
was once a quiet, I love Fort Lauderdale. Once quiet, now all the Miami people's like, well, Miami's not available. We're gonna come up there, and it's not too far. Fort Lauderdale's right up the coast, and it's like, man, so people are gonna party. They're gonna do what they want to do, but it's unfortunate.
It really, really is. But yeah, ultimately, I think the creators were kind of happy with the shutdown as well.
Yeah,
I think they felt like it was time.
yeah.
But I think you're right. Of course, it would definitely wasn't equal treatment in terms of spring breaks because, like I said, we see what they're dealing with now. If they would have curtailed that earlier, they wouldn't be
Mhm.
dealing with what they're dealing with. But bad behavior has
Mhm.
been enabled for some for such a long time. But I
Mhm.
digress. But
I
you guys, I
digress.
think I think that Hulu did an amazing job with this documentary.
Yes.
Like I said, it was far more informative than I thought it would be. You still do get to see a little bit of booty shaking. They still take it back.
Yeah.
You still get to see somebody aunties and mamas and all that. But
Hey,
I do
auntie.
also feel like we get a I also did feel like we got a history lesson in it. And so
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
always appreciative of that. Again, you can watch this on Hulu. Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told. Anything else you want to talk about, Jay, on the
I just wanna
Freaknik
say
tip?
I wanna thank, Hulu, but I also wanna thank Mass Appeal. Now, if you don't know Mass Appeal is run by Nas, and Nas has done
Okay.
a lot of different documentaries, basically, more hip hop oriented, originated documentaries, but now he and his crew, Mass Appeal, have done this as well. So look out for that. Mass Appeal
Awesome.
production is definitely going to give us a lot of history, and I really appreciate this. I really do.
Oh, I'm excited to hear that. I'll definitely put that in the description below so that people can check that out as well. As always, Jay, I appreciate you coming on with me and talking about this documentary. Anything you want to discuss? Anything you have going on?
Well, thank you guys. Again, Ashley, thank you for having me. And yes, so we have a lot going on. We're covering right now BMF, Black Mafia Family. So definitely check us out there. We also have Tyler Perry's Ruthless. So we're going to be doing that live and check out our recaps as well. And we got a whole lot of other things going on. So definitely check us out at VacateJTV. If you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe if you like the vibe. Hit that like button. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for coming on today. And yeah, y'all know what it is on my channel. Some of everything. Definitely after this is posted, I will have some more of my weekly reviews up. As always, you guys, if you haven't already, please go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, like the video. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.